upper90studios.com.
Fantasy Premier League tips and cheats. On today's show, top 10 forwards. Who are the top 10 strikers for game week 1? We'll talk preseason form, red flags, and our final 3 forward picks. The top FPL tips to give you a competitive advantage. Let's begin with our top 10 forwards list. In no particular order, we're going to go through the pros and cons of each player, starting with Lukaku. Some of the pros are, he's set at a good price of $9 million for the numbers he delivers, and some of those numbers are very impressive. 20 goals per season on average for the last 4 seasons. He's only 23 years old, which means he's going to only improve under Koeman. Some of the cons are he's a doubt for game week 1 with a heel injury, and Everton faces 2 tricky fixtures in the first 2 game weeks. They have Spurs at home and West Brom away. Then it gets easier. And you can check it out with our fixture difficulty chart. Go on the top of our website, there's a Fantasy League tab at the top. Lukaku actually made our first draft team, but we're having second thoughts now. We want to be sure that his focus is 100% on Everton and the start of the season. The worst case scenario is he's in talks with a different club and doesn't give his all in the first few game weeks while he's still at Everton. We've seen this before from other players. They sometimes fake an injury or they give just less than 100% effort. For those who are considering bringing him in, make sure that you get additional information on his heel injury ahead of game week 1 to be sure that he's actually going to play. Let's move on to Harry Kane. 200 points average in his last 2 seasons. Spurs attack is still looking great. They beat Inter Milan 6-1 in their preseason friendly. Kane scored 2 goals, 1 assist, and hit the post in that game. He has an excellent support with players like Ali, Eriksen, and Lamela. And Spurs has a really good set of fixtures up until November. One negative for Kane is his price of $11 million, which ties up funds for other positions. If you bring in Kane at that price, it means that you're probably going to head into the season with a top-heavy team with strong attackers and bargain goalkeepers and defenders. This strategy is risky because if you get things wrong initially, our bench won't be strong enough to provide adequate cover. This is usually how we start our season. It doesn't mean that we're right and everyone else with balanced teams and stronger benches are wrong. Everyone has different tactics which work well for them, so always trust your instinct over anyone else's advice, including ours. Next, we move to Jamie Vardy. Some of the pros for Vardy is he looked great and scored against Manchester United in the Community Shield. Leicester's attack looked pretty good against United. We would actually choose him over Mahrez. Some of the negatives are he's card prone. He already picked up a yellow in the Community Shield, and we can see him getting a couple of reds because referees are going to be more strict this season. This will also impact the bonus point system, which will take a hit due to yellow and red cards. And the last point is Leicester's actually in the Champions League this season, so their depth in the squad is going to be tested. Vardy is right up there with the top forwards for game week 1, but his price is just a little bit high at $10 million. He punished us late last season when he picked up a red card for diving. Any yellow cards affect the bonus point system in the FPL negatively. There's nothing more frustrating than knowing your player is on for bonus points, then he picks up a late yellow card, and all of them are wiped out. It's the worst. Best guess for Leicester City is they're going to start well enough. Then it's going to get a little bit tricky with the extra Champions League matches. Those usually cause a lot of fatigue, both mental and physical, and they increase the risk of injuries. Is this enough to keep out Vardy and Leicester from having a good start to the season? Absolutely not. I think Vardy might be a crucial player to start off the season, it's just at risk with the yellow cards. Let's move on to a really popular player in FPL this season, Ibrahimovic. Some of the positives are he's going to score goals. He can always win a game on his own. He scored a great header in the Community Shield against Leicester. Antonio Valencia put in a really nice cross, which he headed in. It was a game-winning goal. Some of the cons are he's unproven in the EPL, and he doesn't have the best record against the English clubs. Rooney is a huge problem that's going to take some time for Mourinho to solve because he's club captain. He breaks down all their attacks. He has a horrible first touch, and he's not combining well with Ibra. Of course, that was just one game, so we can't take too much out of it, but it does give you some clues. The Community Shield may not be that important, that serious, but it does give you some clues as to how things are going to shape up early on in the season. The question is, will he get the same quality of service at Manchester United that Aguero will get at Manchester City? Ibrahimovic didn't play particularly well against Leicester in the Community Shield, and United's link-up play in the attack was awful. Martial was isolated on the left. Whenever he got the ball, he had no help. He was out on his own to create something. Rooney and Ibra were dropping a little bit too deep, and when they did check to the ball, they were both occupying the same space. The most important thing, though, is that he still scored despite all that. So he's going to score plenty of goals, but maybe not so much initially because of the lack of proper service to him. Did he make our final 3 forward picks? We have to trust our instinct on this one, and you're going to find out in just a minute. Sergio Aguero. He'll get 20 plus goals per season. He has a great supporting cast with De Bruyne, Silva, Nolito, Sterling. He did score a goal against Arsenal in their last friendly. Obviously, the big concern with Sergio Aguero is his fitness and injury problems. Those hamstring injuries do add up, and it seems like he lost a little bit of that explosiveness. But when fit, Aguero is probably the best player in the Premier League. At 13 million, he's by far the most expensive player in FPL, but we think he's worth every penny. He's unstoppable. Speaking of world-class forwards, let's talk about Shane Long. All right, maybe not, but still, he's coming off his best ever season. He just signed a fresh new contract, which means he's going to want to prove himself that he's worth the money. He's a guaranteed starter because Pella is off to China. Long is priced well at $6.5 million. As far as preseason form, he did score in their last friendly match against Athletic Bilbao. They won 1-0. He scored the game-winning goal. Some of the cons, some of the doubts are going to be that there could be a little bit of an adjustment period since they have a new manager. And also Sadio Mane. Mane went to Liverpool, and this is a player that stretches defenses and likes to put in those dangerous crosses for Shane Long to finish. So we're curious to see how they shape up in attack. Shane Long did an excellent job for us at the end of last season, and he was one of the first names on our team sheet this year, partly due to what we remember from the end of last season. Now let's talk a little bit about the newcomers. Andre Gray. Great scoring record last season in the championship. He scored 23 goals. He scored plenty of goals again in this preseason, and he's set at a fair price of $6.5 million. Some of the doubts are he's not proven in the top flight, and the quality of the players at Burnley is a little bit questionable. Are they good enough to stick around in the Premier League? Burnley also did invest in this transfer window, which raises some questions over their ambition to stay in the Premier League. It's always possible for championship players to make the jump to the top flight. We saw it last season with Deeney and Wilson up until he suffered that big injury. We admit we don't have enough knowledge about Gray or Burnley at this time to suggest him with confidence. The games can't come soon enough. We need to watch some of these games to get a better opinion on these players and these teams, these new teams. For that reason, we're going to avoid this type of player initially. We like to start the season with players we're more familiar with, then reassess a few games in. Another newcomer is Leicester's Nigerian striker, Musa. Scored 2 goals in the preseason against Barcelona. He looks like he's going to fit in well with Leicester's attack, quick counter-attacking system. He had an impressive last season with 17 goals in Russia. Some of the cons are he's unproven in the Premier League. He's not nailed on initially. We think he might split some minutes with Okazaki. He's definitely one to keep an eye on, but not the type of player we choose to start off the season with. Rounding off the list, we have 2 players we're a little bit more familiar with, but we still need to list their pros and cons to see if it's worth bringing them in. We're going to start with Diego Costa. One thing about Diego Costa that seems promising is Chelsea's attack looked really impressive in this preseason. He was actually unlucky not to score more goals in their last preseason match. Some of the cons are he's rumored to be on his way out of Chelsea this summer. He's still reckless, unpredictable. There's the risk of long suspensions. It's the same as Jamie Vardy, or even worse because of Costa's reputation. He's going to be targeted by players and punished by referees for retaliation. Next is Olivier Giroud. He has excellent scoring stats when in form, and he rivals the best strikers in the league. Arsenal's attack is dangerous with Ozil, Sanchez, Ramsey, Cazorla. So he has top players in attack to give him that great service. Some of the questions are he's set to miss at least game week 1 after Euro 2016 with France. He also scores in bunches. He goes through some dry spells. And lastly, he's not nailed on. He rotates with Theo Walcott. If you need a temporary replacement up front, and Giroud happens to be in good form, then he's a great temporary option. But if he blanks, sell quickly. One notable mention is West Ham's Andy Carroll. He was brought up by one of the commenters on our blog at upper90studios.com. He seems to be a good price at $6.5 million. They have deadly players up front like Payet, and now they just recently signed Andre Ayew from Swansea City. So he's going to have quality service. The only issue with him is whether he can stay fit. Seems like he doesn't have the best discipline off the field. Sometimes that doesn't help you with your recovery times and how you prepare for the next game, and it can lead to injuries. He's still one to keep an eye on, and it might be worth a gamble to start off the season. Andy Carroll, West Ham. So who are the Upper 90 Studios' final 3 forward picks? We're going with Sergio Aguero, Harry Kane, and Shane Long. Amp up your FPL game by subscribing to us on YouTube or bookmark the Fantasy League tab on our website, upper90studios.com. You have nothing to lose and everything to gain simply by using our tips and applying them to your daily fantasy team. See you soon.